Good morning, social media breakfast. I hope everyone is doing amazing. It's going to take a minute for everyone to come in, but today we're going to be talking to Elizabeth Edwards, and I'm really, really excited about it because she really takes communication and looks at what drives people internally. So how people are cognitively receiving your communication. And I think that's really important when we talk about social media because we are missing one of our major things, which is, body language, except for maybe in video, but even then, we're not getting that, body language. So I think that the words that we say and the words that we use in our online communications is hugely important, really, really critical. And so I asked her to come here and share with us some of the things that she has found, really talking about in her engagement lab, which I'm really excited to talk about too. And she just told me in the green room that this is her 20th year in business. So she also has some really great business understanding of communication. And a lot has changed, hasn't it, Elizabeth, in the last 20 years?
A few things. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you, your company, kind of where you're coming from so people can get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely. So first, thank you for having me, Cammie. It's great to be here with you. So as you mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Edwards. I own two companies, Volume Public Relations, which turned 20 this year, and Engagement Science Lab, which is the sister agency we launched a few years ago to share our training method with the world and basically our secret science sauce of how have we been doing things at Volume. That is why we've been such a successful agency and do such award-winning and successful work. And we had a real specific way that we did that using a lot of behavioral and cognitive science. And so I started sharing that with the world a number of years ago and training our clients and such on that topic as well. And that's why I'm here today. And Engagement Science Lab was born to kind of share that methodology.
So why did you get into cognitive or the scientific side of things? So kind of give me did you go to and get a communications degree? What was your background?
So when I went to college, I had really set in my brain that I wanted to study communication. My dad was an English teacher. Communication's my world. But I wanted to study psychological communication. It always fascinated me, the mind, and just always seemed logical that if I wanted to communicate to someone more effectively, I wanted to understand how their mind processed that communication. And at that age, I only knew it as psychology. So I wanted to study psychological communication, but it didn't exist then. It still doesn't exist now. And that just feels existentially wrong to me. And so as I was running a public relations communications agency, a big part of that job is training junior team members, new grads from comms programs, how to do our job and how to communicate strategically. And as part of that function in training my team, rather than only looking at, what are best practices for putting together a press release or what is the best way to use a social media platform mechanically, we also started studying scientific journals, what they were learning about what new scientific studies were showing about how the mind was processing communication and engagement. So I can show a slide here as an example of some of the different journals our team subscribed to and the types of studies that we would read on Friday afternoons and summarize with each other every week of speaking to the heart, social exclusion and reliance on feelings versus reasons and persuasion. That might sound like Greek to some people, but
yeah, really very much I think people would be oh my gosh, well, I don't even understand these things. So how do you kind of bring that to be something that's practical?
My dad was a Shakespeare teacher. That might have something to do with it too. He crammed a lot of that into my head. But I love this kind of stuff. And it's fascinating to me to get in there and try to figure out what are these people with all these big fancy words trying to say to us? What did they learn? What's the so what? And then how do we change how we communicate on behalf of other companies based on that information? Because I take what I do very seriously. When a company hires me to launch them, to communicate to employees for them, whatever that communication may be, I take that very seriously. And I want to know I'm doing it to the very best of my ability. And I never felt that I was doing it to the best of my ability if I wasn't also studying things like this, what they had to teach us and then changing the way I write a message or design a pitch or create a headline or message a company or strategize a launch, all based on that information. So multiply that by these last 20 years, we came up with quite the science-based system. It's truly what we call now pulling from the behavioral, the cognitive, the social, and evolutionary psychology fields. I have a slide on that one too, if you want to show folks of all of the different sciences now present in the work that you and I are here chatting about today.
I would love to show that now, but before we do, I want to kind of get into this. So first of all, I want to say hi to everybody, because I'm sure some of you have showed up now. We just jumped right in. So this is Elizabeth, and she's talking a little bit about what she does with Volume PR and her company and the Engagement Science Lab to bring communications from that really gets into the psyche of how people receive them. So really that background of you've put a lot of time and effort into that, and you've boiled it down into a system, which I think is really cool. I mean, that, because, you know, knowledge without a vehicle to deliver it is difficult. That's what I really intrigued me about bringing you here, is because you have a vehicle to kind of bring this up, and you've used this with like some pretty big brands too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been doing this in our work for the last, I'd say it's about 5-6 years into after we launched it started to become part of our work, and we started training clients, making it a really integral part of their program about 5-6 years ago. So we work with companies like Transamerica, BMW, Coca-Cola, Novartis Pharmaceuticals, Arizona State University. We train a lot of professional communicators that want to understand how to really dial their voice in to be effective and have the right kind of influence and elicit change. That's what we're really here to do with communication.
Oh yeah, and I love that. And so so tell me how what you do like kind of differs from the traditional communication model, you know, which is basically, you know, create a message, you know, find out who your audience is, and then deliver that message to that audience, and then, you know, measure the results. Can you kind of tell me how yours differs?
Yeah, well, I like to start with some definitions. I have a picture if you want to show, but constantly we talk about communication, and we define communication as the exchange of information, okay? So let's go back to school for a second, and at kind of college and academic level. Communication really is only concerned with, and the study in that field, the process of exchanging information. And I think what's broken there is that we need to add on the exchange of information with the intention of creating understanding and comprehension, which is why we communicate in the first place. But we have not necessarily understood. The science hasn't been there. That's why they don't teach it in universities. We didn't know before enough from the sciences to know if I modify my communication this way, the audience, they're not in along in understanding, as opposed to like, what are you saying? And throwing up all kinds of stop signs. And so we've been, we call ourselves Engagement Science Lab, because we've treated our work as a lab of what if we send the pitch with this word versus that word? This study tells me that I should use the word because in this instance while justifying a gain. So let me try to organize my message around justifying a gain with a because message and see what happens. And by God, when we do that, we see a jump in response rates of 25%. So we know that that's really working. And that when we apply these studies, we really do see a huge change in understanding.
So I want you to slow down there, because that was a lot. So justifying a gain. So what does that mean?
So there's so many things that we could talk about in the sciences to teach. You know, in that case, we've all heard the importance of why, sharing your why.
So what's your why?
Yeah, that's giving someone a justification, a reason. Explain your why, and use any of those terms around it. And do so with the word because. Because science shows when we use because, the brain pays attention in a different way and gets on board in understanding and saying, okay, you're making sense to me in a different way. And then additionally, there's a thing called prospect theory, where we, simplest way to put it is that we kind of understand the world in terms of pain and gain. What do I stand to lose? What do I stand to gain when I'm making choices? And when we think of and kind of frame up a situation this is what I stand to gain if I participate in this. I'm more likely to have a sense of understanding around what it is, as opposed to like, let me just tell you all the things. It's focus on what the gain is for me.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because I think we do come at people with a laundry list of things they're going to get from something. You're going to get this, and this, but we don't have a really good understanding. I mean, I'm just rephrasing what you're saying to try to make sure I'm having an understanding, that two-way communication model, that they just get drowned up, and they're like, it's very easy to like say, well, I don't need that. Just it's, you don't have a because as you said, but the pain and the gain, there's also the pain part. And I do think that a lot of marketers have figured out the pain part. You hear it all the time, like, unless you buy this thing, you're going to die or whatever, so could you kind of explain which is better, like the pain or the gain?
You really can't have one without the other. This type of marketing that just comes in with all the fear and the pain and the drama and the awful is not what's most effective. We need to understand what's in it for us. We want to know what we're here to do, but focusing on and juxtaposing or contrasting for people as you think about what you're telling them. Think about, yes, what's the pain that may exist around this state, but better yet, transition quickly to the focus on the gain then therefore that you introduce or that your process brings.
I've heard some people talk about this, like salt and pepper. So like you should, you should be very, very, you want to add some salt, but not too much. You know what I mean? So the salt is very light. I mean, and pepper, it depends on how much you like spice, right? But you can add a little bit more, like, how spicy do you want to get? So I think I don't know, that might be one way to think of it, is like, get that pain out and then quickly tell them how they can actually solve that pain, right? Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm saying to just come out with your message without including some type of pain and gain frame is usually a mistake.
So that's the deal, guys. We need a pain and a gain. And is that like we do social media, and so we do messages every day. Like in social media, we have small, short, character, like you do Twitter. I mean, some people do long things on certain platforms like Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, but there's a lot of messages going out every day.
Yeah.
But every single message should have some element of pain and gain, right?
Your hero brand message should. Your overarching message might not be present in every single post, but it should be very clear in your story. It should be very clear of the benefit juxtaposed against the need. Absolutely.
Okay. So like every single message is building into this bigger brand story.
Absolutely.
Good. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I mean, when people are thinking about how do I apply this, so I'm kind of a very practical person. I'm like, how do we apply this, right? So how do we get this? I want everybody here to walk away with at least one thing they can change in their communication over the next, 24 hours that would actually make a move. So what would that be in your mind?
Oh man, there's so many we could talk about today.
But what do you want to pick one?
Sticking on this one, I would say make sure that when you're looking at your kind of global message, how I'm talking about my company, is it really clear the pain that people are experiencing that I have and the gain that I offer against that problem? That would be one way of framing it. And then, am I translating that? Because a lot of times what we see in our actual social posts is just kind of preaching of like, this is so great, but it's not couched in the why based on what the audience experiences. Another one though that's really important too, Cami, that I really want to encourage people to think about using in your social posts a lot more often, especially in your imagery, is contrast. And the mind, especially in social media, where we're moving so fast and seeing so many things competing for our attention, when we use something called contrast effect, we see that the mind really pays attention and kind of snaps into focus at a different level. So when we can juxtapose, before and after states, or with and without states, or so many different ways that we can do this with our imagery. One example we have here on screen.
I'm going to make it bigger so people can see it all really well.
Yeah, this is a great example from Whole Foods. They were talking about the honeybee situation and that crisis, and really wanting people to talk about that in a larger public relations context. And this is how they were contrasting your produce choices with and without bees. And what's just fascinating is we understand that when we contrast things for people, especially visually, but we can always do this with our words as well, we just understand it faster at a deeper level. It achieves a sense of meaning. It seems to achieve that state much faster for us. So especially when we're talking about complex topics, a lot of our clients are technology or telecommunications or scientific companies, people who do complex things. How do we take something that, like my mind needs a minute to get around this big thing? And how do I do that in a really fast, really simple way? And I think that we can all agree. We look at this screen and we could sit here and have a big rhetorical conversation about the plight of the honeybees, or you could just look at this picture real quick and see like, oh, look, where'd the limes go? Where's all the apples? It suddenly like makes sense to us all in a different way. And I think some of the best way to understand this is just to experience it ourselves and realize, hey, yeah, it's seeing things in a contrasting form that achieves faster meaning for me.
And Jose's asking, is that the before and after effect?
Definitely. Yeah. Before, after, with, without, now, later. There's so many different ways we can get contrast effect working.
Well, and that actually kind of answers what Nick was asking about. He was saying, do you have any templates that can help to create the pain game message? And it's these things. So like when you're writing stuff, say with this and without this, and before and after, you and others. You don't have to use the actual words though, but
right.
How can you see it? What is you and others? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And on that question of how to incorporate this in your work, I would say brainstorm all of these. Take all 4 of these categories and sit there for 15 minutes for each. And what are all of these for my company, for each product, for all the different things? I think you will see an explosion of ways that you can take all the myriad parts of your message and start to do that.
Well, and if your agency's like us, I mean, sit down with your client book and your team and do these for each client. It's a really good exercise.
Absolutely. Just in a great way to explode content, but also start to run some of these exercises can help you then start to see maybe even a new macro message for your company, even a new bigger framework that maybe you hadn't thought about before, because when we're so in the trenches, especially when we're doing comms for ourselves, it's so hard to see it from the outside perspective. So this is a great exercise to do that.
Yeah, totally. So talk a little bit about what some of the mistakes people are making in their communication, because we're talking about what they should do, but like, what should they not do? Let's do that for a minute.
It's a great question. I have an example here from a company, Transamerica. Most of us have heard that we worked with, and they're such a great company. And I love to use this example because it's just one that I think we can all really relate to and makes a lot of sense for all of us. But they came to us because they were working with a new company that had remessaged a certain division with a bunch of new language that was supposed to help them sell a lot more and make a lot more sense. And they were seeing everything reversing in the opposite direction. People were engaging with content far less. They were leaving the website much faster. Bounce rates were way higher. Just everything was working in the opposite direction. And what do you do when you've just done all of this research and created new messaging based on research and it's making people run away? And so we did a psychological behavioral audit of, well, based on what we know about the mind, what is potentially offending it? And this is one we see a lot. It's not just for them. It's why I like to share it, is that so many of us apply this one wrong. But there's a thing called social proof. It's that we look to society, we look to our neighbors to say, how should I behave? How am I supposed to act so that I survive? We all survived by community in order to get where we are in very recent history. And so because of that, we're still in our non-conscious mind looking around to our neighbors to say, well, what are you doing, Cammie? Because I should probably align with whatever y'all are doing or you guys think is okay in order for me to be okay. And that's happening in our non-conscious mind. So back to Transamerica, their hero message was for a retirement product. They were talking about how 84% of Americans are not saving enough for retirement. Sharing this, what we know as and use in social psychology is a term called the social proof. I'm saying, here's what society is doing. But the problem is that when you frame a social proof in the negative, you're telling people what not to do. So by saying 84% of Americans aren't saving for retirement, you're directly telling people, do not save for retirement. Nobody's doing it. It's not really safe, so you shouldn't do it either. It doesn't have the effect, the cerebral effect that I think the marketers were expecting of, look at what a crisis it is. No one is doing this. Therefore, we must all get together and do this. No one's recycling. We better all get together and do it. No, the more you tell people what everybody is not doing, the more you are telling them not to do it too.
So how can they fix this? I know you fixed it for them.
Yes. So many ways that we can, what we call aligning with social proof. First of all, speak in the positive of what are people doing. Celebrate what is being done and orient your message around the way people are taking action when it's something like, I want you to change what your behavior is. Then in terms of ways to align with it, there's thousands of them. Earned media, case studies, testimonials, reviews, people checking in on social media, wisdom of the crowds. There's a never-ending list. Search social proof on social media, on YouTube, and there's phenomenal content.
But you have to use positive social proof. That's what you're saying here. Is So what did you say instead of 84% are not doing it? What did you do instead? Do you have that?
It was all messaging about aligning with how smart this is and how much it's going to save you and help you, and that it's the smart choice to get
smart people. The smart people thing. Smart people save money because then they are on vacation instead of working at Target.
Smart, happy, focusing on those types of traits that are important to that specific psychographic.
The reason I say Target is because I actually went through the Target checkout line a couple of years ago, and the woman that was checking me out was celebrating her 80th birthday that day. I was like, I mean, maybe she works there because she loves to, but I was like, ooh, do not want that for my retirement, right? So cool.
Plan.
So how does this, I mean, we're talking about the social proof and all this. Let's bring this back to social media because this is the social media breakfast. So how can social media really support these messages in a way that is authentic and, isn't too alarmist? I'm wondering about that too.
Yeah, so I think the thing to keep in mind when we're designing our social media content is just making sure that we, as much as we can, that we're aligning with what we know makes the mind happy, as opposed to what makes it say, stop, I'm not liking this message, or this is confusing me, or this is not for me. So social proof's a great example. Align with the positive. Focus on what people are doing. That's how to bring this one into your camp. Or contrast effect. Just use that in your imagery. Social media is such a beautiful place with imagery, where we can start to contrast with and without, or the pain versus the gain, things like that. I would highly recommend those as two examples of ways to start thinking about how you're creating your social content so that it is a little more.
So almost like the two image thing is really important in many ways, that contrast of two images. And we don't do that much. We usually just put one image out there and that stands for the message, right?
Absolutely. And that can really deepen understanding so much faster when we contrast than all the words. We tend to think, what do I have to write? And we're seeing increasingly on social so many long form posts, and there really is a place for those. There truly is. But there's also a place for simplicity in juxtaposing images that contrast what you're trying to say.
And she said social proof align with the positive. That's really a good one too. The before and after effect, as we discussed. And I'm just trying to see if anybody else has said anything else. I'll pull it up if you guys say it. but I think this is really interesting because there's a lot to wrap your mind around. But even just focusing on that one slide that you pulled up, that could you pull that up again? The one with the before and after and all that again? Because I really want them to see that again. Because I think just even focusing on that one thing, just doing that one thing will explode your communications, it sounds like to me, and make it so much better in a very short period of time. Hold on, let me pull that up. With, without, before, after, you and others, now and later. I just love that. So I do want to get a you and others. I asked you this already, but could you give us an example of what that would be like? Because we've done a lot of with, without, before, after.
Yeah, so think of this as kind of the state of the use of the product and what it's like when you're experiencing it versus if you're not experiencing it. So when we think about, let's stay with the Transamerica example, and there we're talking about retirement products. So kind of a you and others, those who are using that product are happy and successful and stress-free and spending their retirement years hiking and traveling, and in the imagery, it's all in that type of realm as opposed to the imagery of working into your later years, or the kind of strain stress elements that may exist around that. That might be a you versus others. There's a lot of way of saying, how does this apply to me as a person, or the people using this product, and whether
it's almost like FOMO. Could FOMO fit in here? Like, fear of missing out. Because, if you don't do this, you're not going to have the life of these other people.
Yeah, depending on the story too, it could be JOMO, of the joy of missing out, of I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do it. Yeah, it's like avoiding pain. That's one of the things, moving towards and away from pain and toward not joy, but you know what I'm talking about, not pain. So yeah, pain gain kind of stuff. Interesting. Okay, so
the way to look at it too, that I would want to give everybody to give some food for thought and a takeaway of how do I put this into work. My work is, I want you to think about these 3 questions to activate contrast in creating content for social. What are the positive attributes of your topic that contrast could further enhance? So think about what's working well here. And then how can I also use humor? Humor is such a powerful tool for all of us, but are there even ways to maybe use humor to exaggerate and further show the contrast in how this works? Just sitting with what are some of the opposing states around my topic. Sometimes we're just we know what is good that we've never even thought about it that way of, well, what would the opposing state be, or what's the alternative, and how do I start presenting that and making that part of my narrative?
Would those be like aha moments?
We find a lot of times when we are messaging companies, especially working with startups, where they've got a great idea or great concept of some type of problem that they solve as what initiated it, but we only see things from how close we are to the brand, to the problem, to whatever the topic is, that we don't communicate in this kind of a way. So it's a very helpful exercise to step back from our topic and say, if I was going to disagree with this, what would those states be? Or if I was someone that's a critic of this, what would that perspective be? And really try to sit with that, not be afraid of that, but ideate and brainstorm around it, because it will produce for you new ideas about how to juxtapose what you're bringing.
That's a really great point. Like actually using the opposing things to create your messaging. I think that's really great, because it's like you're in their head. They're like, how do you know that I think that? It's really good. And then pain that may exist or occur in contrast. So that's the contrasting part. Yeah.
It's how we can include pain and gain when in relation to contrast again. Here, pain and gain can be prevalent everywhere, but when it comes back to then contrasting, how I have my message up here. This is a interesting example of contrast in physical form. There's so many different ways that we can get across what we're trying to say. And I want to challenge people to really think about contrasting. I see next, I'm thinking of weight loss before and after photos.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was going to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got one of those from this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I mean, that's really great. What these items here, because that really encourages people not to take as many paper towels without having to say, "Don't take a paper towel," right? And I think I've heard you talk about this before, but the hotels that put up a thing saying, 95% of the people in this room, use their towels, all like one, repeatedly. I forget what it was you said, but it was something like that, right?
Yeah, that was a really interesting study around social proof on that
Mhm.
topic. And what they were looking at is if we give people a social proof reason to do something, as
Mhm.
opposed to a save the planet reason, are they going to be more likely to do it? And they're much more likely to do it. So let me say that a different way. We think like save the planet is what is going to pull on our heartstrings, but science proves saying my neighbor is trying to save the planet, so you need to try and save it too. Or my neighbor is doing this, and therefore, will you please do it too? Is significantly more successful. So in a hotel, you know how when you stay in a hotel, there's a little sign,
Mhm.
recycle, hang your towel up instead of washing it again, save
Mhm.
water, save planet, etc. When they made it a social proof message of people in this hotel are all recycling their towels, not about the planet, but other people in the hotel are doing it. It was a 26% increase in how many people did it. And then when they made it a personalized social proof, where it was all the guests in room 201, Cami, are recycling their towels. Won't you, as a guest of room 201, recycle your towels too? Then it went to 33% increase. So a full third more likely to do something with a personalized social proof claim, as opposed to do it because it's good for the environment. And I think we need to think about this if we work in fields related to climate change, related to
Mhm.
so many of the things that we have as change advancements. We're all toting certain party lines that are just not getting us anywhere. And it's time to think about these things using the science of the mind.
Well, we tend to beat on people like in that. And like, I'm just thinking about the politics side of things. Well, we're not going to get into politics here, but even politics, it tends to beat on a specific point of view on a person. And I just feel like that doesn't make them change ever. That's why we just talk at each other instead of like anybody persuading anybody to do something different. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of thoughts. I mean, first, I would say for our listeners, I write on medium.com. And at
Mhm.
the beginning of the pandemic, I wrote an article called Designed to Divide: Why the Mask Debate Was Guaranteed to Happen as
Mhm.
of March 3rd, I believe it was, because of just a few messages that were said at the very, very beginning. And what
Mhm.
happens when we are in states of collective crisis, as we all
Mhm.
were, and rapidly entering states of what we call cognitive overload and things like that. There's certain ways that we know you can make people say, I am freaked out by what you're saying to me. And some of those things were said right away that caused that kind of issue. So first of all, there's a lot of things I think that we have an opportunity as society, as people, to
Mhm.
learn about communication that we know offend as opposed to accelerate comprehension and successful meaning with one another. And I think it's time that we start to teach that in our schools and make that part of the basis of communication understanding.
I think that would be amazing. So hopefully if there's any professors out there or adjuncts, let's talk about that. You do have the Engagement Science Lab. I am actually going to throw this up, but if you go to engagementsciencelab.com, you've got a really great download there. It's 9 cognitive messages to avoid, which I think are really helpful. Some of the things you said today, plus a few more. So I recommend that everybody goes there and just downloads this. Get on Elizabeth's list and just download this because it's really great. But what else do you do with the Engagement Lab? I mean, do you teach this or do you have a course? I mean, tell us what you do.
Yeah, so we are launching a course on what we call behavioral communication. So
Mhm.
essentially, all the things that they never taught us that we've been
Mhm.
researching and designing about how to approach communication from the very beginning of how to orient this differently based on the mind. And a lot of what we're teaching people to do is how to talk to the non-conscious and the conscious simultaneously so that
Mhm.
they both like what they're hearing. because the non-conscious mind manages 95% of our decision making, but we don't involve it consciously in how we're talking to it, even though it's running the show in there. So a big part of this is teaching us how to talk to the mind differently so that we get better outcomes. And so we have a masterclass that we are launching to teach some of that material.
That's great.
And start to prepare and share with others, how do we really change communication from a fundamental whole so that it aligns in every way with what the mind really wants to be hearing. So right now we do this in one-on-one for companies, for universities, for teams of communicators, for businesses, and of course as part of all of our work. But we have that online masterclass coming soon. So if you download the 9 Cognitive Messaging Mistakes to Avoid ebook, we'll be able to get you some of that information when that class launches.
Yeah, you'll get on the list and you'll send them an email as that comes closer. I think it's a great idea because I do believe that, a lot of people, you and I both got communications degrees. I did, and learned all these theories and did all this stuff. But most people that get into the communications field don't go through a communications necessarily program. You come at it, especially in social media, that's true. People come at it from all different directions. You may be a graphic design and then come in, or you might be in tech and that kind of area and move into this area. But this is a communications field. Like social media to me is like a huge, that's what you're doing, is communicating all day through messages, ads, all of that. And so I do think that communications, training is really great. But you don't have to go back to school. You just have to take Elizabeth's course. So I love that.
Absolutely. Let's focus communication on what it's really doing, which is creating understanding, getting people to agree or to change their mind, their consideration because of what you had to say. And that takes some doing, and there's some science to it. And it's not scary, but it is very easy for us to be offending it and working against it without realizing it. And even if huge companies like Transamerica, who work with the best of the best, are able to put out a hero message that makes everybody run the opposite direction, like we're all making these mistakes without realizing it because we simply don't teach one another from this perspective.
Could you just really, and somebody asked about the, if we have a link to her masterclass, just go to this Engagement Science Lab link right here and you get on her list. You'll get this 9 cognitive messaging mistakes to avoid, and then you will be informed when she goes live with that. It's coming. So, you need to get on the list. So I also wanted to ask, you said hero message. Can I go back to that? So I just wanted to find terms as we go. What's a hero message?
Yeah. Hero message is like your hero, the main thing that you have to talk about. You may have a few of them, but usually on your website, there's something that is in big and bold and larger words than anything else. And that main thing that they see is what we call the hero message. So the first thing that the eye looks at on the homepage.
So what's the biggest mistake people make with the hero message? Because I do believe what you said that Transamerica was making, that's bad. But in general, when I see those messages, it's usually about the company itself. So
exactly.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So ego effect. Let's talk about ego. Everybody has ego. We want to be hearing about things with the word you. Okay. We talked about the word because, also put on that short list the word you. What happens though, when you're in communication or we're working for a company or you're writing, because of ego effect, it works against you when you are actually holding the pen and doing the writing, because you start to write from the we. So everything is like, we do this and we do that and we are here and we. And the audience, they want to hear it in the sense of a you message oriented to them. So instead of we are the greatest thing since sliced bread, you deserve the greatest thing since sliced bread. Switch the ego away from you to the audience. So instead of using the word we, which is writing from that internal, use the word you.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And I think that there's some issues with it on Facebook. I will tell you that in ads and stuff, you may get some rejections if they feel that you are making a claim. So you do have to be careful about how you use the you, and like you will get, you will become, it's a little bit, you might get rejected on your ads. So you have to you have to go around that a little bit. But even then you can still say, I found that and this is
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's a little bit of an issue with that.
Agree. And we find using things like you need, you deserve, you want, as well as asking questions. Do you want? Do you think? Do you feel? Getting people into their emotion by asking questions and then contrasting with what you're going to be bringing with that.
I like that. You need, what was it? Maybe one of my team can do that. You need, what was the things you said? You need, you
want, you feel, you deserve.
Yeah, if you guys type that up for me, I'll put it up on the screen. You need, you want, you feel, you deserve. I love that.
All those like emotions. They're like, yeah, I do. I want to think about that, or I have worked hard for this, or, I am someone who's working hard. And so I want to take a break, if we're talking about a vacation, whatever that message may be.
Well, and it's interesting. I'm going through some, I have a coach right now that talks about thinking of things in terms of movie scenes, like, talking in terms of scenes rather than talking in terms of like telling, so setting the scene with your words and your visuals and everything, so, and I've seen it in the point of view stuff on TikTok too, say, how can you say you have a brother without telling me you have a brother? Like, how can you do that? So, I mean, that's a really good exercise. I mean, that's a TikTok thing, but honestly, that point of view thing is like really powerful. And they're doing it on TikTok like crazy. So the younger generation is coming up, really getting this point of view thing. I think that's really interesting.
I think contrast effect is why TikTok is so appealing to us, is that's really a lot of what's happening. Watch some of them. Now you know what contrast is. You'll notice it all over. It's contrast of voice. So much of the time, all the audio is contrast because it's a high-pitched girl voice with a guy lip syncing. Like that is funny to you because it is contrast and not what the brain expects. So it throws us a little bit and catches our attention in a faster, fancier way. And it's why it's so darn entertaining.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Framing as a question as an underrated strategy? I mean, what do you think about framing things as a question?
Questions are great. Get the mind to start thinking. You want people engaged. You want them participating. Questions can be done in a obnoxious way. We all know the person is like, are you ready for more? Like, it can get a little cliche, but I want you to be authentic with them. People don't have any time for the BS car salesman-y kind of questions. Get the authentic question for your brand, and absolutely, they are an underrated content strategy for sure.
Good job, Sade. Thank you for bringing that in. Does anybody have any questions? So we have a little bit of a delay, so I'm going to ask for questions. So please start bringing in some questions. I'm going to keep talking with Elizabeth, but I want to make sure that we get those questions rolling. We have about another 2 or 3 minutes to talk. Then I'm going to transition into next month. There's some stuff coming up, but I want you guys to get your questions answered if you have them. I guess one more thing I wanted to ask you is there something that we didn't talk about yet that you really wanted to make sure we covered today?
No, I think we really hit on a lot of important points. There's so many things that we could talk about, overall with all of this. I think if people want to learn more, one place that I would send them is what I put up here on the screen. If this kind of stuff gets you super excited like it does us, a lot of what we're teaching is how to align with the biases that exist in the mind to facilitate meaning and understanding.
That's cool.
And so this link that's at the bottom of the screen, maybe someone could post that in the chat for us too, is on Wikimedia. And this is to a thing called the Cognitive Bias Codex. It is a visual mapping of the ways in which the mind uses bias, or what we call communication coping mechanisms, to create meaning and make sense of things in this hyper noisy world. So if you see like this top corner up here where it says too much information, all of these things in blue, these are all of the things that are going on in our mind because we get too much information and we're trying to make sense of it, and our brain helps us in doing that. And so what is the different effect that happens that facilitates understanding? So I talked to you guys today about contrast, prospect theory, which is pain and gain, social proof, 3 of them. Do you see how many are on this screen?
Yeah.
There are hundreds.
I
And
mean, you could spend like days like going through this, which I mean, so this gives you lots to chew on for sure. And you've turned this, you have something that looks like this too, like your model. I would love to see your model too, but I put the link up for the Cognitive Codex on the screen, but I also just put it out and hopefully it showed up in most places. It looks like it went to Facebook. Okay. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, my team is pulling it and making sure it's everywhere. Kimberly, you might have to do it in LinkedIn. I don't think it will take my links from here. So I love it. But did you have your model to show too? I'd love to show them that.
we don't have a visual of that one to be
the
able to
round one?
show. We have this piece here that we were showing earlier. I think this might be what you mean, which
Yeah.
is all of the areas where what we are doing now in this masterclass and in behavioral communication. So we're teaching this field.
Yes.
We're taking from all of these different sciences, the behavioral sciences, behavioral economics. You might be hearing those, a lot of books and things in that field. The cognitive sciences, which is neuroscience, linguistics, the social sciences, which is sociology, anthropology, those types of fields, and then culture, psychology, those fields. And it's these 4 disparate sciences that we knitted together, overlaying over the best practices of communication and those types of that cognitive bias codex you were just saying, those hundreds of different things that we now know the mind uses to create meaning, and putting them into real world communication and saying what really works, what really makes a social post get better engagement or not when we adjust the science behind it. And that's what we're now teaching in this coming behavioral communication.
I just love this so much. I mean, I'm probably going to be on the front row of this class, just saying. But yeah, I just feel like this is really great to think like this. I don't think we often do as practitioners because we're just so busy every day getting those things out there and getting things done and wondering why they're not working. And so I just think that this is a really great way to think about why things aren't working. Even if we just go back to that if you could pull that slide up one more time, the 4 things that we can do. Okay, I'm just going to have you go over these one more time, Elizabeth, so that we can like get a sound bite out of it. Okay. So here we go. It's the one with the before after, that slide. Yeah, I'm going to pull it on up. So if you could just talk through this one more time with an example for each one, then we have like a little sound bite we can put out everywhere.
Great. So when you're creating your message, think about how to put it out in a way that contrasts with or without, a before or an after state, a now or a later, a you versus others. Contrast these types of states in your imagery and in your words, and you will create faster meaning and understanding and change.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So I had an interesting thing from Geetha. So we're just going to have a little community. Oh, wait, you had something really cool there.
Yeah, so 2 other things if you want to keep reading. I mentioned medium.com. That's the article. There's a couple things there, but the Designed to Divide, it's a long read that explains a lot of what I've talked about today in this much longer form, if you want to take a look at that. And then right now at strategicmagazines.com, this is the fall issue of an international communications magazine, have this article, Creating Confusion or Comprehension, the ethical imperative for what we're talking about today. And then I think that now that when we know better, for those communicators in the group, when we know that we could be putting a message out there that might confuse people more than help them create comprehension, I think we have an ethical imperative to make ourselves aware of that. So for those who like to read a bit more, I have this too.
That's lovely. And on Medium, do they just search you up? Like, how do we find you on Medium?
Yeah, just search Elizabeth Edwards or Designed to Divide.
Designed to Divide on Medium.
Exactly.
.com. And then this Creating Confusion or Comprehension, that's strategicmagazines.com. You would just then search Creating Confusion or Comprehension, correct?
Exactly. Or search Elizabeth Edwards. It's in the September 2021 issue.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Let me see what else. So I just wanted to say, so Geetha had something funny to say. Today is 12/11/21. A palindromic date. That's fun.
It's meaning. There's meaning in that.
Day, month, year. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, that is a funny thing about that talks about cultural bias a little bit too. We're talking about how most of the world actually puts dates out is this way: the day first, then the month, then the year. Americans, we do, the opposite way. So I think that's interesting because that just points out another bias that exists out there, which is cultural bias. So people just look at things differently than that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Geetha. That's fun. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here today. I really think I've gotten a lot out of it. Have you guys gotten a lot? Let's give some love to Elizabeth. Let her know one thing that you learned today. Tell us one thing that you're going to take away from this talk that you're going to try in your communications in the next week. Okay, so I want you to walk away with something you're going to do, because you can sit here listening to, and then it's just a lecture, it's just a college lecture, and it doesn't do anything for your communications if you don't actually put it into practice. So I'd love to see what you're going to do in the next week with this information that you got. And as we're doing that, you can stay here with me for a minute, Elizabeth, if you want. I'm going to bring in a few of my colleagues. Vanessa, you might want to turn on your camera. I just bumped her. I'm going to take off the branding because it's right over poor little Sarah's head. Let's just go with nothing. All right, cool. So I just wanted to bring in this team right here. We are working right now on the Gift of Guidance, which is next month. And we are going to have a full day conference. So it's very different than it has been in the past. Same is going to be that we've picked 10 nonprofits, and here in just a second, I'll reveal to you who those are. Thanks to Caitlin, she has been working on that. She is our nonprofit coordinator, and she's working with all the nonprofits for next month. We also have turned this into a full day conference where you two are going to be able to get your social media strategy done in one day for 2022. You're going to have some time to work on it. It's going to be we have speakers, but they're going to be speakers that set up the work session. So it's a workshop. So we'll start in the morning. We'll have hopefully an inspiring speaker that wakes you up, gets you going, and then you will have a chance to do all of those pieces of your strategy. And then in the afternoon, we'll bring the nonprofits in who might have been there all day, and you guys will work with them to refine their strategy. So you're kind of doing a 2 strategies in one day kind of thing, which is cool because it's going to make you remember it. So Elizabeth talks about cognitive things, and that's part of doing that is going over. Hey, Vanessa. So that is how we're working on that. And because of that, Vanessa's here because she needs you to fill out our, we need volunteers. So we need people that are going to be table leaders. And if you're a table leader, you need to be somebody who's led social media or social media for your company or for clients. It's really important. But we also need scribes who don't need all that. We just need somebody who can actually organize the information and get it back to the nonprofit. We need 10 of each of those. And so if you want to be a volunteer, here's the link. Please go immediately to this link and get yourself on the list. We do have some that are rolling in already, so I appreciate you for that. But definitely get on that list. For the Gift of Guidance itself, I'm going to give that a second for people to see that. So do you have anything to say about that, Vanessa, as far as what we're looking for? Where are we at on volunteers?
Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. I invite you to come and volunteer. So as Cammie just said, whether you are a scribe or a table leader, or you're just open to being placed where needed, we need you. The wonder of this project has always been creating opportunities for our local nonprofits, people that serve others in our own back door, or our own backyard rather. And so just fill it out. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at any time, but we're looking forward to having you volunteer with us. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I'm going to really quickly share my big screen because, let me make sure I have it on there. This one. So these are our nonprofits for 2021. Vanessa, do you want to just read through them and tell us just a very little bit about each one? Do you know them? Or
yeah, so this is Addie's Faith Foundation, DEA, ICANN Alliance, Friends for Life Animal Shelter, Fuller Life Family Therapy Institute, Houston Area Women's Center. I remember interning there years ago. Houston Freedman's Town Conservancy, Imprint, Supergirl Shine Foundation, Teen and Police Service Academy. One thing you will know is the diversity of all the 10 nonprofits, from animals to human rights to all these different things, domestic violence. And so, again, your voice is needed. These are nonprofits that serve people in the Houston area every single day. And so they can stand to have an improved social media strategy, which is what we're able to do during the Gift of Guidance.
Yeah, and I just put up the link for the actual the registration page. So if you write this down, I also have like a little bit more information about each nonprofit there too, so you can read about them a little bit. So that'll help you with that. So yeah, that is it. So I'm really excited to have that happen. And this team has been great for getting this together. We have a great team of people that are working on this for you for this event. We had them, I was going to say the judges for this to pick those nonprofits were Rebecca Council, Roger Bear, and Juan Alanis. So they actually had to go through all of the 20 something odd, I don't know how many was it, Caitlin, 22 nonprofits? Yeah, 22 nonprofits, and choose rate each one. And it was hard because we had to say no to like 12. But what we have done for those 12 is we're allowing them to come to the conference for free, like one person. So it's, or I think it's free. Is it free? Did we do that? Or is it? Yeah, it's free. So that's really cool. So that even the ones that didn't get to come for the full day, and they get to make their strategy anyway. So it's a win, win, win. So yeah, again, I wanted to come back to the committee. I just want to, just give them some love. So Rebecca Council's doing tech speakers, and you heard she was a judge too. She's doing everything. Sarah is the sponsorship coordinator, which I'm going to give her 1 second to talk about that right now. And then Caitlin is the nonprofit coordinator. Vanessa is the volunteer coordinator. Jay Franco, we're doing a reception that is in person. So we're going to do all day virtual, and then the evening is going to be an in-person reception and networking event. And she's working on that and getting that ready to go. And of course, me and my team are doing the event coordination. So we are really excited as a team to be working here for you. And I hope that you'll register. It's a $25 investment, and it's a investment in your future of your company, your business, your communications for next year. And it's a no-brainer. $25 is nothing. And we're going to be able, for the first 100 that sign up, we have a really special gift that Sarah's putting together. And we were talking about it the other day, and it's cool. So you want to be like one of the first to register, please do, because you definitely do not want to miss out on the fun stuff. So do that. I'm going to bring up Sarah for a minute to talk to us about being a sponsor. So can you talk about sponsorship for a minute, Sarah?
Yeah, sure can. So the Houston social media breakfast community is 800 strong. So it's huge. And our sponsors will reach this expert communications group. We're experts in social media, marketing, internal communication within organizations, and also online. So we wanted to do something really special for our event sponsor. So not only will they get pre and post promotion, but we also want to give them an opportunity, if they want, to address the conference, tell them a little bit about their company, but also to present some content. So just like Elizabeth just did with her cognitive messaging mistakes, every company has some tips to give. So we want to give them an opportunity to do that, not only in the conference itself, but also in the program. So there'll be space in the program for them, for their company information, and also for some content. Because if there's content, people pay more attention, and they'll hang on to that information. So as Cammie also said, we're creating a mailer, a pre-conference mailer, which we'll have the conference materials, the program, but also some fun interactive goodies. And we have an opportunity for a sponsor for that mailer as well, where when people open up that mailer, the welcome will be from the sponsor as well as from the conference itself. So they'll get some really nice exposure that way. There'll also be space in the program for content from that company if they'd like it. And then we're looking for in-kind sponsors for color copying, for graphic design, for postage, and for swag.
Awesome. And how can they reach you?
Oh, they can reach me by email, sarah@sarahshaw.com, or on Twitter, direct message. There's my Twitter handle, Sarah Shaw. Instagram, instant message, just add TV to the end of my name. Yeah.
I'm going to put that up here so people can see it. And then I'm going to kind of say, I'm just going to bring back all of the people here. Hold on. Let me just do that real quick. And I'm going to say thank you to the volunteers. I appreciate you guys so much. You can definitely drop off if you want to. I appreciate it. And one more thing with Elizabeth, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. I want to let you go if you need to. But I really appreciate that you are here and that you shared with us, because I believe that what you had to offer is really important. And I hope everybody really heard what you had to say so that we can get you there. And I definitely want to one more time make sure that you guys definitely download our 9 messaging mistakes, because this is really going to help your communications. It's going to be really, really important to you. And I think that it can make a huge difference. I love that some of the, and we didn't go all of the results, but some of the results that you've had with your clients over the years, and you have them on your website. It shows exactly what those results were and like the huge jumps they made. Like I don't know if you have any that you know off the top of your head that you can just mention.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very into measurement over here. And so, I have a slide of that we put up if you want to show folks. But when it comes to measuring, with some of our different clients that we've done calculations around that for, Home Advisor, one brand, applying this to the way that we approach their media relations, we increased their placement goals by 2,000%, the amount of coverage that we generated. For Sony, we launched a product show. We brought in 94% of launch sales through PR, relative to only 6% of it coming from advertising, which we were able to calculate because of the way that we sent out the PR message so radically differently. Imperial is a beer from Costa Rica that is produced in what's called a water positive way. I don't know if there's any beer drinkers in the room, but when you drink beer, it uses a lot of water. And this is a company that figured out how to change that. And as we were sharing that message to launch them into markets in the United States, we increased sales 93% in markets where they already existed. But about the way that you change how you take that message to the market and taking it to the market with effective PR. So we have a lot of
and then I over here, Transamerica, because we did talk about that one. Look at that. That message changing that message led to a triple-digit increase in sales. Triple digit. Just one message that was messing everything up. So this is really important. And so that's why I brought you here, because I want them to know that this is how important this is. And so I thank you for bringing this slide up, because I really do think that the results show exactly what we need to know. And so I love that. I just want to, a couple of people took my challenge. And so Miss Ann said she will apply more contrast and social proof strategies. I don't know. Oh yeah. Tracy says that she's going to use the contrast effect to visually demonstrate what I mean by that. That was good. Thank you. Kathleen already put up a post on Instagram. Good job.
Good job, Kathleen.
Walter says contrast. He's going to do contrast. And let me see if I've missed anybody. If I did, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying, but I'm running through these pretty quick. So, yeah. And so she was talking about, this is somebody having some trouble. She's Geetha's having an alternative protein space. Yes, I can see that. Depends on what the alternative protein is. I saw something the other day that was like crickets or, cricket protein powder. And she's struggling to get the message that tempeh is superior to seitan. I don't know what that is, but yeah, that's really interesting. So I think just taking some of the things that Elizabeth did today and running that through, and I think social proof would help you, especially on something like that hasn't been adopted much. Like, can you get people to talk about it and to really think about it? and give you language like that they're using.
Yeah, I'd love to give her some specific advice too when dealing
Okay.
with complicated science things like this.
Mm-hmm.
Find someone to talk to, a friend that doesn't know anything about what you're doing, that will be honest with you, like really honest too. And explain it in really simple forms, and watch where they're still confused. And then keep talking, and listen to how you yourself start to simplify and tell that story in simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler ways. And a lot of times that comes out when we're doing it verbally in conversation with a trusted friend who is going to say, like, girl, I'm still lost. Like, I'm still confused. And what will happen for you is that you will probably start to see your message at how I need to be explaining it from here instead of from over here. Because I'm thinking I started over here, and actually I've got to start my storytelling and contrasting way earlier on even smaller, more simpler points than where I think I'm supposed to be. So when dealing with something like this, I recommend you start that process, and then you may find what you need to contrast are much more early stage, rudimentary points before you get to what you're talking about right now.
I love that. That is really, really helpful, especially for that. Talk to somebody who isn't going to understand, and then just keep simplifying it. I just think that's brilliant. So maybe you can help me with this. So I'm going to tell. I do have a something I want to give away today too. So let me do that before we're all totally done, because I know you guys are done. We're at the end, I promise. But I did want to tell you that I have, and I'll share my screen real quick. I'm going to have to unshare yours and then share mine. Dana Steele, who's been a speaker at Social Media Breakfast multiple times, she came a couple of months ago and talked to us about how to ditch our elevator speech for 3 words. Really, really powerful, talking about simplification. That's what kind of made me remember to do this. I have 3 tickets for tonight's show. She has a one-woman show about her mother's Alzheimer journey. It is really powerful. Like I was there with my team on Tuesday. It was packed. It was beautiful, like so many people. So I have 3 tickets, $150 value, because they're $50 each, for tonight's show. So whoever's the first to get me in DMs, either on social media, wherever you get me, I will go out and look. I'll look at the timestamp. I'll take the first person who comes. But I have 3 tickets for tonight's show. It's been critically acclaimed. It's really good. It's a great show. And she's a community member with our organization. So the only thing I will ask is, if you do want to take these tickets, that you send out at least, 1 or 2 social media posts about it, and tagging her and letting her know how great she is. That's pretty much my only requirement. So I just wanted to put that out there. So if somebody gets with me, that'd be great. First one, first come, first serve. That being said, I am done. And Elizabeth, thank you for your time. Oh my gosh, you've been amazing. So appreciate you being here. Again, if you haven't done it yet, definitely be downloading her messaging document on engagementsciencelab.com. As you can see, she's extremely smart. She's got so many things to give to your communication strategy. You want to be on her list. So thank you so much. And I will talk to you guys at the Gift of Guidance next month. Definitely go get that. Go get that. We're going to be there. It's going to be amazing. You do not want to miss this. You do not want to miss the ability to have your social media strategy done. Like, how many times do we put these things off? It's time for us, you not to put it off anymore. Come, it's $25. It's a feel good thing. You get to help a nonprofit. It's amazing. So we will see you in December, and I cannot believe it's the end of the year. Can you? Unreal. All right, guys, I will talk to you soon, and thank you very much.